Hi, welcome to vCert Manager demo presentation. For those of you who are working in a VM environment, changing certificates is a common practice. However, it has always been a bit of a challenge every time we do this. But since security is our top priority, we're going through a manual, laborious, and error-prone process, thus making this a massive pain point to customers. In addition, there is no capability for end-to-end lifecycle management for the certificates. Now, we at VSS Labs developed vCert Manager to automate the entire process of discovery and certificate update flows, managing the end-to-end lifecycle management of certificates for VM components, which uses a single pane of glass approach. vCert Manager is a web-based application developed in .NET Framework with MS SQL database. It runs three services. First is the infrastructure service, which is responsible for discovering VM components like host, web client, update manager, inventory service, and the vCenter server itself. Second is the certificate inspector. This is a watcher of the certificate status from CA server to vCert Manager database. And lastly, the update worker. Its task focuses on the actual update of the certificates. For our demo infrastructure, we'll use two vCenters, vCenter 5.0 and vCenter 5.1. Under vCenter 5.0 are three clusters. Cluster 4.0 with ESX 4.0 and ESXi 4.0. For cluster 4.1, it will have two ESXi 4.1. And for cluster 5.0, which we will set to auto-deploy later, it has two ESXi 5.0. For our demo flow, we'll have to log in to vCert Manager and go through the main tab. We'll also have one-time setup processes, ongoing operational certificate updates and infrastructure change flow scenarios. And then lastly, we'll have to discuss on logs, dashboards, and reports. So for the one-time setup, you have to go through setting up certificate authorities, initial discovery of VM components that will be registered to Cert Manager, and we have to register VM component credentials using both bulk setting option and component by component option. These are the predefined certificate authorities that we have registered to vCert Manager, one standalone and one enterprise CA. Next thing we have to do is to attach the vCenter server. So we first add vCenter 5.0. We supply the credentials, and we can also do a test connect. We have the vCenter database password. We can add information here if we would want to update the vCenter server certificate. But for this vCenter, we'll just leave it blank. For the next page, we have the cluster settings. All the clusters under the vCenter would be displayed here. So we set cluster 5.0 to auto-deploy. And we proceed on saving the record. So after that, the vCenter would undergo the discovery process. As we can see in our notification bar, it would go to the vCenter and get all the objects attached to it. We can add the next vCenter, which is vCenter 5.1. Then we save the record. So we got two vCenters, vCenter 5.1 and vCenter 5.0. We'll go to vCenter 5.0 and just take a look at what it was able to discover. So we got three clusters. Under a cluster, we can find two hosts, version 5.0, 4.0, and 4.1. Next, we proceed on updating the credentials, plus setting the certificate authority that we will use when generating a new signed certificate. We can either do this by bulk or per component. We would want to set ESXi 20 to use a standalone CA. So we just select standalone here and then we click save, implement the changes. Now we are ready for operational flow 1, which we will kick off 3 simultaneous host updates, 3 different versions from 3 separate clusters, all under one vCenter. So we'll kick off host 12, host 16, and host 20. Now it has been queued for the update. What activities you're seeing on the notification bar are the same activities or tasks seen in our vCenter client. Since we set one standalone CA, our application would go and send a notification email to CERT administrator of the pending certificate approval. Once approved, our application would automatically proceed with the updating of the certificate. But for the enterprise CA, it's a fully automatic process. Now, 2 of the hosts has finished updating. We're just waiting for ESXi 016 to finish the update. Now, if we refresh the page, we'll see that these 3 hosts has now been using the certificate generated, 2 in Enterprise CA and 1 in Standalone CA. We can now proceed with operational flow 2. What we'll do is we'll revoke certificates on 2 hosts. Host 012, which is on auto-deploy, and host 016, which does not have the auto-deploy feature enabled, and see what happened. We'll also use this flow to show the component-wise certificate history feature. After manually revoking the certificate in our CA server, our background service would go and check the current status of those certificates. In this demo, we expose this button CA Sync just to trigger the background service. Now we see that the certificates are revoked. So if we refresh the page, we'll see that host 12 and host 16 has been revoked. We are expecting host 012 to start the update of the certificate. Now we can see that it's starting. So while waiting for that to finish, we can actually go to our vCenter 5.1 and update the credentials for ESXi 5.1. Now if we go back, we'll see that ESXi012 has returned to a valid status. We also see some component history when we click on the host name itself. We can now proceed with operational flow 3 and 4, which we would want to update a 5.1 host certificate, and we also would want to change VM infrastructure and showing how vCert Manager automatically detects it. We just kick off the job for ESXi 5.1 update certificate. Now it's starting to update the certificate. While waiting for this to finish, we can start moving one host from vCenter 5.0 to vCenter 5.1. Now we kick off the discovery service by clicking the sync button. Now it finished the discovery. We'll go and take a look at vCenter 5.1 and we'll see that ESXi011 is already there. We can also see that ESXi006 is still processing the update of the certificate. If we refresh the page, we can now see that ESXi06 has been using our Enterprise CA for its certificate. Now if we'll take a look at vCenter 5.0, we'll see that ESXi011 has now been removed in this infrastructure. Now for operational flow 5 and 6, we'll update the certificate of vCenter 5.0 and its subcomponents. We'll also show how to export the certificates from vCert Manager. After that, we'll go to logs, dashboards, and report features while the vCenter is being updated in the background. So for vCenter 5.0 update, we'll add or we'll attach a vCenter 5.0 in vCert Manager and supply the credentials. This time, we have to specify the vCenter database password. After the discovery, we can proceed with editing the credentials and the CA server that we would want to use for the vCenter components. Now we can kick off the update certificate job for vCenter 5.0. So while waiting for this to finish, we'll jump off to logs, reports, and dashboards. Now for logs, we have three subcomponents: Certificate Manager, Services, and Web. Events that are triggered in our vCert Manager module will be listed here. We also provided the search criteria so that the user can dynamically search for records. For the services, all of the events triggered in the background will be logged in the Services module. The unhandled web application errors items will be displayed in the web log. Now we can show you how to export certificates. You choose the host or the component you would want to do the export. And then in this page, you can choose the file option. You can also include the history. You can also choose what keys to include, either public or private or both. You can also provide a password protection. Now if we extract the certificate.zip, we can see the records or we can see the certificates inside the subfolders. We also have the dashboard. The graph will actually tell the user of a cumulative history of the certificates in vCert Manager. The user can also make use of the list of components widget to query the status of the certificates. For example, the revoked certificate. We also have provided these reports where the user can make use of the search criteria to dynamically search for a specific record. Now, if we go back to our vCenter 5.0, now it's done updating the certificate for vCenter 5.0, including its subcomponents. And that's vCert Manager. Thank you for your time. To request for a beta evaluation or to know more about vCert Manager, please contact Luisa Watan de Guzman at luisa@vsslabs.com.